Hey everyone, this is Wayne Bennett. I'm with ECRM and RangeMe. Good morning. Glad to see everyone. Hope everyone had a great Father's Day. And we are here today with a great conversation. Oftentimes in today's world, we're talking about some of the new media out there, like social commerce, digital media, in-store media, a lot of exciting things going on in the digital media realm. However, we've often not heard much about some traditional media. And in this case, today we're going to talk about a great case study using radio as the media. And today I'm joined by CEO Buck Robinson from Retail and Response and Jennifer Sweta, who is the sales and marketing manager for New Nordic Naturals. And this group here has had lots of success in using radio as a platform. So welcome both. And before we get into some of the Q&A, maybe I'll start with you, Jennifer.
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit about New Nordic.
sure. Well, New Nordic is a company that's been around for, we're getting close to the 40-year mark, but it's about like 36, 37 years. And it's a company that originates from Sweden. We're in 46 different countries. And basically the way we operate is that we give, we give solutions to people's health ailments. It's not just an ingredient, it's a formulation. And we really believe in vitality and long life. And we really specialize in science-backed ingredients and formulations for everybody out there. So it's a company that's very close to my heart personally. And it's a great one. It's a great one, if I do think
Great.
so.
Well, that's great, Jennifer. Thank you for that. And Buck, good to see you again. I know you're just back from an ECRM session, but Buck, for the audience who may not know you, maybe you can share a little bit about Retail and Response and what you do.
So yeah, just back fresh from ECRM last week, which was fantastic, and always great attending those events. And your team is just first rate every step of the way. So we set up Retail and Response as an agency last year with this specialization in helping new and emerging brands really be able to navigate the media. Just get on shelf, not to get that sell in, but to really get that sell through. That's going to keep them on the shelf and keep them growing in their retail presence.
That's great. And Buck, I don't know if you buffered out. I don't know, but just tell us again what it is you
No
do.
problems. Retail and Response is an advertising agency that really specializes in helping emerging brands not just get secure retail placement, but make sure that when they do get on shelf, that they're going to get the sell through that they need to really be able to stay on shelf and hopefully to move into even better shelf position within the retailer. So helping both the retailer and the emerging brand succeed by creating advertising that really moves product.
Yep. No, great. Thank you, Buck. And so let's get into this. So I'm going to start with you, Jennifer. Before using radio, your marketing strategy, and why was it no longer enough in today's retail landscape?
Yeah. So before using radio, basically our marketing strategy at New Nordic was, I would say, really heavily focused on print media, on in-store visibility, email marketing, a bit of digital as well. And we really always were keen on building brand awareness and driving sales, particularly, I would say, around the wellness savvy woman, who's already engaged in the natural health space. And we were really well established pretty much everywhere. The US market was a bit of a trickier one for us, I'd say. I mean, it required us, it's such a large territory and it's so big and there's so much to do and there's a lot of competition. And so it really required us to kind of think outside the box and think outside our comfort zone. And as we all know, like the retail landscape shifts and there's more competition and the online space gets crowded. And, there's always an importance of an omnichannel brand presence. And so we realized that we kind of needed to reach new audiences in some sort of a memorable, trusted way. And being in the health and wellness industry and in that space, consumer confidence is huge. So that's where radio came in. It offered us a more credible, a more intimate space that basically allowed us to connect with a more mature, more health conscious audience that still values traditional media.
And before you used radio, What concerns did you have about using radio, and what ultimately convinced you to move some marketing budget into the radio platform?
Yeah, great question. So, radio was a leap for us. It was a completely, like I said, new medium, and I would say we had valid concerns. Was our audience even listening? Was one of them. How would we measure the impact of it, and would we even get the same ROI that we did in print and in other forms of media? And what ultimately convinced us, besides retail response, which I will touch on, but it was basically that the changing retail landscape, I would say, demanded more of a storytelling, more of an emotional connection, and radio could offer that.
Mm.
Our core demographic seemed to be more still, not more, but actively still listening to radio. After people coming back from COVID, they were going back to work, and people were still engaged, listening in their car and still tapping into that channel.
Mhm.
And so we thought that why not pair radio with some of our other marketing activities, and why not create that multi-channel reinforcement? Then we met up with Retail Response, and they really helped us because they knew how to craft the message we needed for the US. They knew the US market. They knew what New Nordic stood for and who our audience was. And they were able to really help us accelerate on that and that media more
Mhm.
than we could have in any other way, really.
That's great. And so, Buck, I'm going to come to you. So what made New Nordic such a strong candidate for radio? And how do you position radio in a world dominated by digital and social media?
Okay, so it's a really good question, and let's with the second part first. Okay, so
Sure.
as you said, that kind of the shiny objects right now are digital and social media and influencers and all of those things, and all of those things are fantastic. And in no way, shape, or form do I want to say that this is better than. It's not a better than or worse than. It's just different. And I think one of the bottom lines, and I'm very old school when it comes to this, is at the right price, all media works, right? Like it's a mathematical formula of what are you getting for your dollar. And especially to emerging brands or brands that are still trying to create traction in the US market, you really want to be able to make sure that your dollars are going as far as they possibly can.
Mhm.
Because you can't get them back. If you spend them on the wrong thing and then it didn't work, guess what? That money's not coming back. So one of the
Right.
things that we're always very conscious of is kind of the bang for your buck. And radio, and I'm going to say audio in general, because there's lots of facets beyond just traditional AM, FM radio and Sirius satellite. There's also podcasting and digital streaming and other things along those lines. But at the end of the day, what makes them really stand out, as Jennifer mentioned, is their ability to help you tell your story to a significant audience. So again, 97% of the American population still listens to radio on a weekly basis. So it has massive reach. And then it boils down to what are you paying to reach those, to deliver those impressions? And when we can be able to deliver cost per thousand that are 1/10 what you might be paying in the digital space, it's going to work. And it's not just going to work. It's going to move traffic into stores.
Yeah.
And I always like to remind people that typically speaking, the last medium that somebody encounters before they walk into a store is the radio. It's what they were listening to in the car as they
Sure.
pulled into that parking place. So if you're the last impression that's being delivered, the chances of that recollection are very high.
Yeah. Buck, and I apologize for my camera. It's going in and out. Sorry about that. But Buck, let me ask you this question. So Retail and Response is covering traditional radio, satellite radio, and podcast media. That's all under the audio umbrella.
That's correct.
Okay.
We- to- They all have kind of different strategic usage. And I think one of the things that's really important is to recognize there's no one size fits all. We have a lot of clients that come to us and they say, God, I really listened to this podcast. I really love this podcast. They have no idea what the cost of admission is going to be or what they're going to do. And so one of the things that we have to have, a realistic conversation with them is to say, let's start here where your dollars are going to go a lot further. And we'll work our way up the food chain. And eventually, if the economics make sense to be on that podcast, we'll get you on that podcast at the best price possible. But that's not where you should start. Because if it doesn't work, guess what? You just use your entire marketing budget on a whim. And that's just not a sustainable way of approaching your marketing strategy.
Right. You know, Buck, as a follow-up to that, so how do you get an emerging brand started with audio, radio, and what does the onboarding process look like?
Well, so I'm going to answer that by going back to your original question about New Nordic and what really stood out, right? So New Nordic has dozens and dozens of different products.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that was important was to say, you can't approach the US market by trying to do what I call kitchen sink marketing, which is you throw everything in there but the kitchen sink, because you're not really saying anything about anything. You're just giving little itty bitty bits of information about too many products, and then nobody is really being spoken to. So one of the things that we had to sit down first was to say, out of all of these different products, all of which are great products, which one do we think we're really going to be able to carve out a niche for and really help you become the 900-pound gorilla in your vertical? And of all of those various products, the one that really stood out to us was a product called Active Liver. And one of the reasons it stood out was, one, it appeals to every adult. It's not strategic. You know, we've crafted messaging that's more female skewing, more male skewing, but it's something every adult in America isn't thinking about necessarily is their liver health. And they should be, because the things they're eating and drinking and doing are affecting their liver. So we really saw that that was going to be a place where that message could resonate. And there wasn't a 900-pound gorilla that we were going to have to try and wrestle with. We could go out there and establish ourselves first. And so it was one of the things that I think is really important is to say, one, especially as we've met with a lot of folks at ECRM events that have multiple products, is to say, we can't take all of these on simultaneously and do any of them any justice. We have to be able to find who's the hero and focus on the hero and getting that hero established. And then from there, we can be able to introduce additional products on top of that. But if we don't make that first impression really strong with that first product, all the rest of them are going to be the collateral damage, unfortunately.
Gotcha. That's good. And so, Jennifer, so you engage with retail in response. Tell us a little bit about the impact that you've had early on. And I'm curious to know how it did impact, let's say, Amazon sales.
Yeah, for sure. As Beck said, yeah, we worked with him on Active Liver amongst other ones, but Active Liver was really the hero. And we saw early on a spike in Amazon activity relatively quickly, I would say. After launching with radio, we noticed like a clear lift in both traffic and sales on our Amazon storefront. And that immediately showed us that radio was driving the awareness and pushed people to search online for our products. There was definitely a curiosity factor that was starting to form, shopping behaviors changed. We saw more search volumes. We saw search volumes go up. We saw especially in the products, I would say, that were being mentioned in radio, we saw a bump up in them. Really, radio was starting to play a role in the purchase intent, I would say, even in a competitive e-marketing environment such as Amazon. So it was really great to see.
That's great. Sounds effective.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things where I just want to point out, as we have this conversation with a lot of folks, is to be able to say, it's not, we want to create a marketing program that's going to be kind of a rising tide that lifts all boats, right? And the reality is, every one of the commercials that we craft has a call to action at the end. So at the call to action, after we've told them the story, let's say 45 to 50 seconds worth of story about the product and its benefits, we're then going to direct that traffic where to go to find it. Mm-hmm. And in that, you're going to be best served if you're pointing them to one option online and one option in store, or 2 or 3 options in store if you have multiple retailers. But it's really important to understand that those two things work in concert, right? So the feedback loop that we get from the point of sale from the bricks and mortar is very slow. It's very hard to react to that because we're getting it sometimes 30 days in arrear. It's like trying to drive a car looking in the rearview mirror, right? So what we've used is Amazon becomes what I call our canary in the coal mine. Amazon gives that immediacy of response. So we're going to see it and feel it within 24, 48 hours of that commercial dropping. You're going to start to immediately see that impact. And that allows us to be able to fine tune and direct things in flight, knowing that there's going to be a similar impact at retail. We just might not see and feel that as quickly, but Amazon becomes our proxy for all of that. So a lot of what we want to try and do for any kind of emerging brand is say, it's not an either or, it's an and let's use them strategically based on the feedback loop that each provides.
And let's not forget also to that emerging brand should also include into their e-commerce strategy, Walmart Marketplace or Walmart.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever the online option that they have that's going to serve in that role of giving them that finger on the pulse of how things are going very quickly is where we want to use that to be able to understand the audience's response and so that we can be able to shift accordingly.
Yep. Yeah. Look, I am very curious to know about the cost of radio compared to other media options like paid social influencers, retail media. Can you give us a little bit of an understanding of the cost vis-a-vis other media channels?
Yeah, I think that the main thing in terms of the total dollars, it's not as, and that's one of the misperceptions that we have all the time, not just about radio, but about offline media in general, to traditional media in general, is that we don't even have to look at it because it's cost prohibitive. There's like this immediate bias that we can't afford it. And I'm here to tell you, you can afford it. And not just you can't afford not to do it because it has that much value, right? So in terms of the gross dollars, it's not any more expensive. And you're going to get a lot more for your money than what you might otherwise get from some of those other channels. But more importantly, and this is something that Jennifer touched on, and I want to just reiterate, the digital world, the social media, the influencer, those are very crowded. You're in a room full of people shouting, and how do you stand out? Whereas in offline media and radio, there's not just you get this kind of spotlight on your product that's going to allow you to be able to stand out from the fray, but there is an inherent credibility that we still have a natural bias as listeners that if it's on those media, it's got to have legitimacy. Whereas there's almost the opposite for a lot of the stuff that we see online. A lot of stuff we see online, we might almost have an inherent bias of like, that's probably too good to be true or something I don't initially trust. So I think that's one of the things that from a cost perspective, the dollars are about the same, but what you get for them is much, much better.
Mm-hmm. And Buck, just the timing on this is very interesting because driving home from the gym this morning, I was listening to CNBC, and sure enough, there was a commercial from a very rapidly growing emerging coffee brand. So it's there. I mean, I heard it this morning. Jennifer, tell me a little bit about the radio, the importance of the radio for your CVS launch.
Yeah,
What kind of feedback did you get? Tell us a little bit about that dynamic.
for sure. So radio really played a crucial role for us in building the momentum around our CVS launch. You know, for us, when we launch with a major retailer like that, awareness is very important. And so we used radio to generate the buzz and educate the consumer at the same time, simultaneously with our in-store rollout. So timing needed really to be strategic. And I think we nailed that. Prior to being with CVS, we were in other US retailers. We hadn't done radio at the time. And the results didn't compare from what we saw when we timed radio and this major retailer together. You know, at the time we weren't on radio at all. So really we saw the radio campaign moving the needle here towards in-store engagement and awareness. And so to the point where CVS even shared with us that they're seeing our SKUs turn quicker than they expected, especially for, you know, in the wellness category, it could sometimes take time. This led to conversations with them about future listings, about brand expansions. It even led to us being approached by other retailers and other major retailers that wanted to list the brand because they're hearing us even more and more on the radio. So who could ask for something better? It was amazing.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And so Jennifer, as a follow-up to that, so net campaign is run, maybe it's continuing, but what surprised you most about the results and how has it changed your perspective on approaching your marketing today?
Yeah. I think one of the things that surprised us the most is how quickly radio drove action. We saw lists on Amazon. We saw search volumes. We saw lists on our website. We saw it with the retailers and the strong movement at CVS and other major retailers. That was really something surprising. I mean, radio being the traditional media that it is, I don't think we expected it to change our marketing strategy so quickly. Another surprise, I would say, with our brand, it was important that our message would resonate in an audio format, right? Our brand, we were so used to print and email marketing and digital. It's a very visual brand. I mean, if anybody knows New Nordic, we've got bright colored boxes that you see behind me. So it's very much relies on the visual as well. And so for us, the surprise was that it still resonated on an audio format, that, on radio, it forced us to create a clearer message, a conversational message. And it worked. The listeners were still connected. And I would say it changed the way we are doing now marketing, because we approach it so much more holistically. It's not just about individual tactics, a bit to what Buck was saying before. It's about creating that media mix that reinforces your message across multiple channels. It really taught us to take calculated risks and really push ourselves out of that comfort zone. And so much so that, New Nordic has been around, like I said, for over 35 years. We are the number one Scandinavian supplier of natural health products in Scandinavia. And so we're in different countries all around the world. And it actually made our other countries consider radio now. So it's really a success story.
Yep. Buck, just a quick follow-up. So in terms of helping brands with the content and creative, Retail and Response helps in that regard as well?
It's a very collaborative process, obviously, because same time we do so very much hand in hand with the brand, since they know their product, they know their consumer, and we really want to be able to make sure that whatever we're creating is going to be reflective of the right message and the right brand image, but also something that's going to make people really take notice and take action.
Mm-hmm.
And quickly, just to touch on what Jennifer said, timing is everything, right? I get a lot of phone calls from a lot of brands who are like, hey, we've been on the shelf for 60 days and we just got a really uncomfortable phone call from a buyer and they're thinking about delisting us. Can you save us? We've got 30 days. And to be honest with you, that's a real challenge. To turn things around in that kind of a matter of time, it is near impossible. But if we can time it so that by the day they're hitting the shelves, we're also have these spots hitting the airwaves, and it's going to be done in a very coordinated manner. It's the difference of night and day in terms of what the outcome of that kind of conversation. Like Jennifer said, instead of that uncomfortable conversation, you're having nice ones like, what else can we be doing? What other products have you got? How do we move you into a better position? Because we're seeing the benefit of the investment that you're making.
Yeah.
Great. So guys, I'm going to end it here with one last question, and a question really for both of you, but let's go with Jennifer first. Jennifer, at the end of the day, what's one piece of advice you can give to emerging brands like your company looking to break into radio as a performance channel?
Oh God, just one, eh? Okay.
Yeah, just one. What's the big takeaway here?
Okay. Well, basically, don't treat radio as a traditional ad. Treat it like a conversation. Make it sound human, make it sound clear, make it sound credible. I find that the message for us anyway, that's how it worked for us, but the message needs to be simple, needs to be benefit driven, and it has to be one that people remember. I mean, you got to be strategic, but you also have to be patient, because I find radio is a performance channel. So really track those results, searches, retail turns, really give it time to build that momentum. And I would say last but not least, I know you asked for one, but I can't help it, is don't be afraid to test. We were hesitant at first to step out of print and of digital and reach an entirely new audience. And it changed really how we look at growth marketing. And when you're doing it with a partner like Retail Response, who really understands the market, it's a perfect marriage of both, really.
That's great. So Buck, let's end with you as the expert in the radio format. Tell us, what is the one? I'll give you two if you need.
Sorry.
that emerging brands need to consider in using radio as a performance, because they got 60 days. You know, getting on shelf is easy and getting off shelf is hard. There's a lot of options, but tell us why radio.
So real quick, I think that kind of just to summarize what I had said earlier into one notion is, one, don't presume that you can't afford radio and or other mass channels, because you can. We can make it very affordable. Two, don't presume that because it may not be where you originally thought you should be going, that it's not a channel that you should be utilizing, because it is. And number three, I would say is, trust us when we say that you will see and feel an immediate response from this. This is not something about mind share and impressions that will somehow pay off down the line. No, we're in the performance business. We want to be able to show you that your dollar is immediately producing results so that you can reinvest, keep going and growing in the right direction. And this is a medium where you will see and feel that kind of immediacy of impact.
That's great. You know, interestingly enough, even after the influencers in the social media and the digital commerce and the retail media, very much a performance marketing driven economy. And it seems from this conversation and this best practice that radio is a performance marketing driver. So it's been great to have this conversation and bring radio into the limelight, make radio great.
That's right.
And with radio great again, I guess. And, we have great partnership with Retail and Response from Buck Robinson and his company. And Jennifer Sweta, thank you so much for stepping up here and sharing your experience with the audience that's near and dear to the ECRM RangeMe community. And, you know, our job is to have brands be successful at retail, right? We help them get on shelf, and we want to also give them the tools and the resources to be successful once they get on shelf. So hopefully those that were listening will appreciate the conversation today. Reach out to Buck, and if you want to reach out to Jennifer, you can certainly do that as well to get the inside scoop. But hopefully we've presented the inside scoop here today. So Buck, Jennifer, thank you for starting off the week on a good foot. And I apologize for my camera back and forth, but it went to camera B. It should be on camera A, but that's the way it goes.
That's it.
All right. So, you know.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk to this with Wayne. Thanks so much.
All right, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Bye.